Hi everyone, and welcome to Off the Arrow Shelf podcasts. This podcast is aimed at people who are interested in field archery here in the UK. We'll cover coaching tips, advice on shooting, shoot reviews, and we might even manage to have some guests. I'm your host, Rob, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode. I am going to be answering a question that I've had come into me via Facebook. I've actually answered the person already, but I thought it actually made quite a timely topic for this podcast because it's to do with the introduction of some of the new rules in the National Field Archery Society, specifically the use of binoculars in barebow class. And the question that came to me: when we start using binoculars, do you think you should use them on every shot, on the normal shot routine, and how can you build it into your normal shot routine or shot sequence? So let's examine that, let's look at that, and let's give a little bit of history of what's gone on historically so you've got an idea. Traditionally, under NFAS, or the National Field Archery Society, nobody was allowed to use binoculars. And then a couple of years ago, one class voted on it being a class rule, and that came in, so the unlimited guys, they were able to use binoculars. Last year, there was 2 votes put forward for compound limited. Now that's a compound archer, an archer shooting a compound bow, I should say, using their fingers so it's not a release aid, and also for the barebow class. Now, both of those went through for voting, and both of those were successful, so that they can both now have binoculars. However, the rules on the 2 classes are different, and it's going to probably cause a little bit of confusion. I'm going to actually read out the barebow classification to you, because that's the one I'm focusing on today, because that's where the question came. The archer is a barebow archer, and they have asked for my advice on how to start using binoculars effectively in their shot sequence so they get used to using them and how to develop their actual abilities. So, under the rules, and if you want to be really sad about this, it's actually page 21 of the latest National Field Archery Society's rulebook. There is now an amendment to this, which states that archers shooting in the barebow class may use binoculars / monocular or placement cards, but not both, to identify the position of the scoring zones while standing at the shooting peg, only as part of their first shot. Any monocular must not be capable of measuring the distance to the target. So there's a couple of things to unpick in that. Firstly, yes, you can use the binoculars, but it can't have any form of range finding ability within that. And that's very crucial, because National Field Archery is the home of unmarked distances. So you never know the distances that you're actually shooting. You're allowed to use any kind of rangefinder in any class. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing, it states that only as part of your first shot. So this basically means that you can look through your binoculars on your first shot, but you can't look at it through them, or you make use of them afterwards. So why am I emphasizing this? Why am I going around this? Well, the question came to me was, how, as a barebow archer, can this person actually develop their skills and their shot sequence to make best use of it, i.e. best use of the binoculars as a tool, and not feel uncomfortable in using them or forget to use them. So I came up with a few thoughts on this, a few ideas, and this is what I'm going to share with you. Firstly, there is an element here of reminding yourself that you have them and you can use them, which may sound strange, but if you've spent years shooting a bow without using binoculars, it's not part of your memory, it's not part of your normal shooting process. I would say that if you perceived a shot to be over 25 yards, then scope it or use the binoculars. Including ones at your own wood at your own shooting site that you probably shoot regularly. So what am I talking about? Why? That sounds crazy. If it's a woodland that it's a course you're going to know the shot, you're going to know the distances. Why are you going to need to use binoculars? 25 yards, it's close enough for most people to see. There's a couple of reasons for this, and there is actually some logic behind this idea. Firstly, you become used to the process of actually scoping a shot, so it feels less alien to you. You become more conscious of it. You become less self-conscious of getting your binoculars out, looking through. So you're building that kind of modern process in, and chances are you might use it initially for like the 25-yard shots, or what you perceive as 25-yard shots, and gradually you'll use it less, and you'll use them for shots where you're not so sure. But initially, it's kind of like building those neural pathways. It's getting you used to the fact that yes, you can actually do this. You know the shots at your wood. You know the shots at your favourite range, at your favourite course. But you don't necessarily know what they will look like through a set of binoculars, because you won't have necessarily used them. You won't know how they will appear. And they will look different, because if you look at binoculars, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about magnifications and stuff like that, the whole principle of them is to make it clearer for you to be able to see where you want to aim. And that has an effect of changing your perspective of the shot. If you are wanting to get used to that, then you've got the aspect of, I want to get used to using binoculars, I want to be familiar with using them, and I want to know what a shot that I already know how to shoot will look like through them. And that way you're beginning to train your head, train your body, train your mind to that kind of conscious perception aspect. That, okay, I know what it looks like without binoculars, let's have a look now and see what it's going to look like through the binoculars. By using them on a course that you're familiar with, that's really beneficial, because you're getting that extra level of knowledge, that extra understanding or comprehension. The other thing I was going to say, and this is why you'd use them on a course that you know, is that light plays a huge effect on how you perceive a shot. So think about this for a second. When tree canopy is fully developed or the sun moves, the light will play tricks on you. So if you're using them on shots that you know, you learn the effect of the light has. And you learn the effect that looking through the binoculars at a shot that you already know, you're getting more familiar with it. Think about it this way. In the morning, the light might be to your back, yes, when you're shooting the target. But if you then shoot the same target in the afternoon, that light might be coming towards you. You might get more flare off the undergrowth. It might have been raining, so you'll get, and the sun's come out, so you'll get more glare, you'll get more reflections. So the more you start using them on a course that you know, and you can get used to using them, the more likely you are to be familiar with it and be able to use them more effectively. It's the same principle as driving your car. Driving your car in all conditions, rain, sun, snow, means that you'll actually become more familiar with it, and you'll get more, if you're driving the same routes in all those conditions, you'll get more familiar with being able to drive in those conditions on a route that you already know. So there's three things there. One, you're getting used to actually using them. Two, you're building skills in actually using them effectively, being able to look through them and not just focus on the shot, but understand how the light can play a part of it, how terrain, how undergrowth, how tree canopy, and all these other factors can play a part. Okay, so that's the first part of the answer. However, there's a bit more to this, and one of the things I said previously is NFAS, National Field Archery Society, is the home of unmarked distances. So you've got no range finding abilities with any of the binoculars that you're going to be using. So does that mean that people are just going to go out and buy the biggest possible binoculars that they can with the largest lenses and what have you, maximum magnifications. Well, for those of you who don't understand how binoculars work, there's two numbers associated. You might have a binoculars that is listed as 8 times 25. So the first number is the magnification, so an 8 times magnification. The second number is the size of the lens. So the larger the lens, i.e. so if an 825 would be one size lens, and I remember correctly, it's measured in millimeters, I think it is. If it's an 8 times 50, then it's going to be a far larger lens, which allows more light in. Downside of that is the fact that it then becomes a larger set of binoculars for you to carry around, potentially heavier. So I've got some wetland visionary waterproofs that are 8x25s. I use them for course laying, I use them for coaching, I use them for bird watching. So basically, yeah, I basically use them quite a lot and they work quite well. This is the second part of the podcast. I recorded the first part yesterday and this is the second part. I'm a bit croaky this morning. It can end up being a bit of a arms race where binoculars are concerned. People wanting the biggest magnification, the best quality of lenses. The flip side though is you've got to carry this item with you. And if it's a large set of binoculars, then there's extra weight, there's extra bulk. And going back to what the initial question was, is how you factor in using binoculars into your shot sequence. You need to also think about how you're going to carry them. If you're going to put them on a lanyard around your neck, then there's the concern that it could catch on your string when you're drawing up or when you release the string. You've got a flip side where that's concerned as well. If you're conscious of where the binoculars are sitting, does that affect how you draw up? So for me, as I said, I've got some very simple visionary ones that are 8x25. They work quite well because what I tend to do is if I'm using them when I'm coaching, I'll have them over my head and through kind of over my right shoulder. So they'll actually swing down to my right hand side. So when I draw up, because I'm a right-handed shooter, both in my left hand, and the pair of binoculars are nowhere near any bowstring or causing any obstruction. The other thing to think about though, when you're going through this kind of shot sequence, is the fact that you don't want it to have any restriction on you. You don't want it to be a conscious element of it being in the way. If you're carrying these, you've got to keep them clean. If the lenses get dirty, if they get scratched, then you've got a situation that they're not going to be as effective and they're not going to be as efficient. Some people will say, oh, well, I'll just put them in my coat. Well, yeah, that's fine, but then you've got to think about how you can carry it in your coat. You've got to think about if you're warm and it's a cold day, condensation can build up, they can mist up. So you're going to need a cloth to make sure they're clean. So think carefully about how you're going to use them, how you're going to carry them. Also think about getting used to using them. Because as a course layer, I will put dark targets into a dark hole. And I'll do that deliberately to make it difficult to observe and judge where it is and how it sits. If you've got used to using binoculars, you've got the ability to look at that more clearly, but it's still going to be a black blob in a black hole. Anyway, that's where I wanted to go with this. In answer to the listener's question, if you're going to start using binoculars, which you're allowed to do in certain classes, bare bow. Oh, for those of you who don't know, bare bow in NFAS is shooting a non-compound bow without any sights. You're not allowed string walking. You're allowed 3 fingers under or split finger, and you're using, most people use carbon or aluminium arrows, and most people use a recurve to shoot it. It's not the same as traditional bow hunter, where you're shooting off a shelf and you're using carbon arrows with feather fletchings. The classes do get confused a little. As I said, currently, though, under NFAS, there are 3 of the classes that are allowed to use binoculars. And will that change in time? I don't know. I can't look into the future and say, but I wouldn't be surprised if more classes wanted them. Going back to what I was saying, though, if you're going to be using binoculars, if you're going to be using for competitions, then practice using them when you're out on your own wood, your own courses, so you get used to actually using them. Thanks very much for your time, and good luck with you using them, and I hope this has been useful. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with any questions or suggestions for future podcasts, then drop me a line. My email address is offthearrowshelf@yahoo.co.uk. That's offthearrowshelf@yahoo.co.uk. Or you can check out the website offthearrowshelf.com. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for listening.